we do have a champ in MLS Next Pro. And Michael Bradley runs from one end to the other when it comes to his coaching Red Bulls too. But when we had Kalen Carr on last Friday, Kalen was a part of the broadcast team on MLSNextPro.com. It was one of those where I thought that the more chaotic the game was going to be, the more it benefited Red Bulls. The more low scoring the game, it was going to benefit Rapids too. So, of course, I said something, and the exact opposite was, in fact, the case. No surprise there. So you end up with a game that goes completely and totally sideways, and it was completely out of control. And it was, if you weren't watching or if you had an extra screen up, then you had the opportunity to have this broadcast up. It was Joe Malfa and Kalen Carr. So here was your layout. Rapids 2 actually had a 2-0 lead. Score in the 34th, score at 45 plus 1, 2-0 at the break. Then you end up with Mosqueda scoring in the 65th, Roald Mitchell scoring in the 67th. You're tied at 2. Garcia scores in the 78th to make it 3-2 Colorado. Mosqueda from the spot makes it 3-3 with 10 to go. So it was 3-2. And then you end up with this particular moment to tie things up at 3.
A pressure-packed moment in MLS Next Pro Cup. Mosqueda scores! 3-3! What a game!
Craziness there to make it 3-3. And then, Gabe, let me hear you.
Is this better?
Yes.
We did it. All we had to do was switch to a cell phone. It's amazing how everything is just a phone now.
Yes. All right. And so it goes 3-3. We go to penalties, and it didn't last very long because you had a keeper come up big in PKs, and it was on the Red Bull side. Here's how you determined your MLS Next Pro Cup champion.
For Harris to keep this shootout going. Harris saved! Causey the hero! The Red Bulls reign in MLS Next Pro!
24-year-old, courtesy of our friends at MLSNextPro.com, Austin Causey, 24 years old, gets the save. Red Bulls 2 are the champs in Next Pro, Gabe. What say you?
Well, it's funny. We talked about this last week, and I think the whole conversation, one thing I kept coming back to was all we're talking about is, can they beat Red Bulls? How will they beat Red Bulls? What do you do to slow down Red Bulls? How could you possibly get around Red Bulls? Now, 3-3 is like a dream scenario for MLS specifically, right? The league has to be thrilled, but it was such an exciting match. They played them well. They did everything right. Obviously, it burns when you lose in a shootout. Very fitting for MLS Next Pro's championship to go to a shootout, right, of all leagues. It was quite chaotic and a lot of fun. So that's about what my thoughts are at. I don't think it gets more fun than that.
When you look at the season in general, and this is where we break out the MLS Next Pro high school yearbook. When we were in high school, you'd always buy the yearbook from whoever was selling it, and it would be like $75. And, you said, I've got to have the yearbook, so everybody can sign it and everything. You would always have the stuff in the back, your senior superlatives, most likely to, MVPs or, whatever, most likely to be president, most likely to do whatever and whatever. When it comes to this season in MLS Next Pro across the board, from what you were able to see from your perch there in Chattanooga, what would be some of the superlatives, whether you're talking team or player, surprises, disappointments? What are your senior yearbook superlatives for MLS Next Pro High School?
Oh, that's great. Good question. Let's start with our independents. I think all the independents will be back and stronger next season. I think all these independents are so fresh to this league, and it's such a difficult league to compete in. they're going to come back with renewed vision, renewed strategy, renewed tact, and maybe approach things a little differently again in 2026. And I think that'll serve them well. I think we'll see the Independents be even more competitive next year. Most improved, I would say, is Philadelphia Union. Not that they were bad before, but the depth of talent they have on that roster is incredible, and it continues to grow, and it feels like it's just growing and growing and growing. Of course, if you sell all that talent or move it to your MLS roster, it doesn't really help you next season, but definitely really, really impressive season in my mind for Philly Union too. Red Bulls were a surprise for me as they developed throughout the season. Not that they, I mean, by the time we reached the playoffs, it was like, okay, but as they developed throughout the season, it was like, wow, Red Bulls are kind of, staying around, getting hot, doing better and better. I don't know if I have a superlative for that, but just super impressed with them. Superlative would be I was impressed with Chattanooga FC. I know that's biased. And, I think the league will flip and look very different again next season. There's so many different ways you can approach the roster building and so many different philosophies throughout this league. But one thing that is consistent is that the personnel moves a lot. The Independents have already announced they're moving on from a lot of their personnel that have shaped their rosters. So in addition to that, the MLS side clubs and affiliated clubs are moving on a lot of talent. Some is moving up to the A roster. Some is moving on to a different club in the league. Some are moving out of the league. So everybody's going to look very different next season.
USL League One's got a final. We know who it is now. And it's, the team was at the top of the standings. They're the ones that get to host the thing. And when you look at what we've seen, it was One Knox winning 4 of their last 5 to go into the postseason. And they've now run the table. And they are now going to be the ones who are going to be hosting all of this. It was a 1-0 win over Naples. And then it took a while for Spokane Velocity to it was 2-2 after 90. They go to PKs. Spokane gets the win. So Spokane has to now travel from one end of the planet to the other to take on One Knox in the US League One Final. Before we talk about the final coming up, I want to look at Naples and I want to look at Portland Hearts of Pine, because you have 2 first-year clubs who went at it differently and had different things go down in their seasons, where we talked about Portland and how they were a success at the box office and all of that. And they're all going to send us to the poorhouse at Christmas when you go and buy all the gear, like the LL Bean jersey and stuff like that. Naples assembled. They went at it a little differently. They had some early contests and found some rivals in leagues that are not their own. And they end up making their way to the Final Four in League One. When I mention Naples and P-Hop in this season, from what you've been able to watch, what are your takeaways from their time this season in USL League One?
Well, I'm super impressed with what P-Hop was able to build so quickly. And I think that Portland Hearts of Pine is a great example of what USL 1 is all about and how dedicated they are to growing the sport in America, being true to what a community club is supposed to do. They are invested in Portland and Maine. They are invested in the people in that community, and the community has reciprocated that energy. They're very bought in. The future is so exciting with that club. I mean, I don't think I've seen a club with so much promise in my life. The way they've turned out, the way they've continued to support. And of course, you look at it from a strategic standpoint, and Naples, very, very good. They had, all of them had a lot of highs and lows. It was really odd how every single club in USL either came out hot and got cold and then got hot again, or they came out cold, got hot, and got cold again at the wrong time. And it seemed like the entire league kind of had that parity. They kind of waved and flowed and ebbed. So they came out and they were really good, and they cooled off and got hot again and made the playoff and just couldn't carry it all the way to the finish line. Portland ditto, came out really strong, had some really crucial pieces like Ollie Wright. And if they can hang on to some of those pieces, Naples as well, they're going to have a great season again next year.
You look at the 2 teams in the final, and you look at a team like One Knox, and you have to go all the way down to Babacar DNA, who is tied for 9th in the league with Anwar Pelaez with Spokane for their leading goal scorers. And so I think that when you look at the offense of this matchup, Pelaez being a 10-goal scorer, DNA being a 10-goal scorer, and then you've got to continue to search and search and search. And then you have Kempish Valdemar, who had 8 for Knoxville, Luis Heel, who had 8 for Spokane. So it's a lot of balance for these clubs where they're coming into this. And so you're having to defend against a lot of different dudes. You can't just focus on the one guy, and we talk about positional gravity and you cut off supply lines, all that kind of stuff. I think this is probably going to be one of the more balanced finals that you will have in USL League One in quite some time, where you're having to go up against Mauricio Valdez, one of the top keepers in the league, who was second in saves, and you got Sean Lewis for Knoxville. So, I mean, this is about as balanced as I think you can get when it comes to a final, despite the fact that it's in One Knox's barn, but they earn that.
Yeah, and you look at that balance and that parity, and then you say, okay, well, if it's so balanced, where does the win come from? I would say it's a match of chess. And you're not going to have a better pair of coaches in USL League One for a chess match. Lee Veidman is, I've mentioned this a couple of times already throughout the fall here. Brilliant tactician. He understands the game, the formations, the way that other clubs play, and what they're trying to do, what they're trying to push forward into that final third, whether it's the high press or they're trying to take somebody away down there or pull somebody out of position. He knows, and he knows how they can counter that. But Ian Fuller is all business all the time. They've got the height. He knows how to use that. And it's funny because I feel like all I heard all season long was, oh, One Knox is so good at set pieces. They're so tall. I don't think I saw him score on a set piece in like 7 or 8 matches. They never. It was always just some crazy feed out front. Babacar Dian scored a really nice one at the end of the regular season, just like he was. I don't even know how to describe it. He chested it in. It was beautiful. And they've just had a great season, finding different ways to get the job done. When you take a couple things away, they've got a few more tricks up their sleeve. They're going to be a handful for Spokane. I would say from a tactician standpoint, Lee Veidman's got it going on. He knows what's up. But, man, I don't know if you can overcome One Knoxville in Rocky Top. That is a tall order and exciting matchup. I mean, it's a good scenario for USL League One and for the fans. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. But it's really hard to pick a winner without, I don't know. It's hard to say how they will collide.
Yep. 13 clean sheets on the season for One Knox, 10 for Spokane. Goals, they were both in the middle of the pack. They were 4th and 5th, or 4th and 6th, technically. One Knox tied with Charlotte for 4th in the league at 46 goals scored, Spokane at 44. And like I said, this is about as even as I think it's going to get. I think it's going to go for a while, and then you never know what's going to happen when you go north of 90 minutes. One other thing that I wanted to get into our League One discussion about, and it has to do with the awards finalists, and then I did want to get it kind of into Rodeo SC a little bit. Awards finalists. I want to get your thoughts, who you would vote for in these particular situations. Keeper of the year, Sean Lewis of One Knox, Carlos Marancio at Spokane, or Jason Smith from Red Wolves?
I'm going to say Carlos Marancio for the highlights, not for the consistency. Sean Lewis is more consistent, but Carlos Marancio is fun to watch play, and he's bold and aggressive and likes to come out and make the big play and does it very well.
686 save percentage, a minus 3.36 goals prevented, 10 shutouts, tied for second in the league. Defender of the year, David Garcia at Spokane, Nathan Messer at P-Hop, Jordan Skelton at One Knox.
Oof. Skelton had a really nice year. I want to go with Skelton. Shout out to Skelton for everything he did right, but Nathan Messer is a madman. Have you seen the photos of him after he scores? He's terrifying. I can't imagine trying to get around him. I'm going to pick Messer just because he's a menace and he loves to play and looks like a wild man every time I see him going after it.
6 and 4, 119 clearances, 29 picks, 32 tackles at a 78% success rate, third among fullbacks with a plus 531 goals added mark. Coach of the year, Ian Fuller for One Knox, Scott McKenzie in Chattanooga, Bobby Murphy at P-Hop, Matt Poland for what we saw at Naples.
Okay, so I think Ian Fuller probably deserves the award, and if you put it out to vote, like Ian Fuller has to win by proxy. I would pick Scott McKenzie, though, and here's why. Just because the Red Wolves were doubted so much, so low in the media polls and ranking. In the beginning of the season, they said the Chattanooga Red Wolves are not going to have a good year. They fell behind early, and McKenzie stayed strong, stayed steady, stayed the course, and got it done. I think they had a really, really nice season, all things considered, especially with a cold start. And he kind of kept that chip on his shoulder and definitely made sure to let me know that, and really carried it through to a nice season.
All right, two more for you. A young player of the year. Mark Bronick at Union Omaha, Rafa Jarugi with Charlotte, Jackson Kusanzu at Tormenta, Eric Kinsner with Red Wolves.
I'm going to go Kinsner just because of the future promise. Tormenta, though, is a really tempting choice there. You know, they've got a good roster in general that's got a lot of potential depending on what pieces change and how they develop going into this next season.
All right, last one on the board, player of the year. Carson Henderlong at Naples, Juan Carlos Obregon at Westchester, Niall Reed-Steven at Tormenta for player of the year.
Oh, I want to pick Niall Reed-Steven, but you know it's got to be Juan Carlos. What a season for Juan Carlos Obregon. I mean, just out of the gate, swinging. So much fun to watch him in every facet of the game. I don't think I've seen a player with more hustle, a higher motor. He's been involved every single minute of every single match, it feels like. You think he's going to have to take some time off or take a break, and every time the ball's on his side of the field, full speed, full bore, and great scorer.
Golden Boot, 17 goals, a 50.6% shooting accuracy rate, 19.5% shot conversion rate, recorded 42.5% of Westchester's goals, 2 assists on 23 chances created, league leading plus 9.49 goals added mark as he moved into the top 5 league's goal scorers all time. So where are you going to be when we have the League One final coming up next weekend or this weekend?
I don't know. I've got a lot going on. I got some volleyball coming up in the Appalachian Athletic Conference, and involved in a few different things around the community here, and a couple of coaches shows this week. And so who knows? Hopefully somewhere good.
Well, then we will catch back up with you again this time next week. We'll talk about the League One final. We'll get out the senior yearbook and find out what you think about USL League One High when you come back next week. Great to break down Next Pro with you in League One. We'll chop it up again next week.
You're the man. I'll talk to you soon.